Oh my god! Is this thing on? Fan of the sequels from... We interrupt this broadcast to bring you devastating news, confirmed by official government sources around the globe. Fully armed intercontinental ballistic missiles have been dispatched from a multitude of locations and deployment methods covering the entire planet. The United States, Russia, China, the United Kingdom, France, Israel, India, Pakistan, the Disney Corporation and North Korea have all launched their full arsenals of maximum yield nuclear weapons, an estimated 12,500 warheads. There will be no turning back. It's too late for negotiations. All hope is gone. Every city, every town, every village, every single human settlement on the earth has a little under 26 minutes until total annihilation. If you are fortunate enough to be with friends, family, or anybody, hold them tight and tell them how much you love them. Now here's Gary with the sport. Gary? Science fiction literature has always had a somewhat dichotic relationship with the future. The same creative brain that can imagine a wonderful world of flying cars, robotic squirrels, or even the extremes of a post-scarcity utopia can also imagine the other side of that coin. A dirty dystopia, sucking the soul out of humanity, or even the very end of our civilization and total disaster, the apocalypse. The exact cause of our fictional demise varies wildly, of course, but evidently there is a reflective correlation between the political and social zeitgeist and what science fiction authors are writing. If we go back in time far enough, apocalyptic stories were very true to the definition, a prophetic revelation, the biblical final battle between good and evil. The more enlightened we became, the more plausible the destruction of the world as we know it would be. As our civilization modernized, the stories that we created about Armageddon would keep in lockstep with the real world. The proposition of alien life is discussed. Are we alone in the universe? Cue a wave of alien invasion literature. As we experience and learn more about pandemics, meteor strikes, supervolcanoes, science fiction extrapolates to the worst case scenario. We invent awesome computers and, naturally, also imagine narratives where the robots rise up and kill everybody. Look out of the window and see climate change happening right now, and you'll also notice a surge of climate fiction. The reality is, sad but true, is that if you're watching this right now, sitting there in your underwear, using your last breaths on Earth to inhale a tube of Pringles, it's too late. The bombs are already flying. So let me tell you what happens next. I know the end of the world is a slightly depressing subject, but we must soldier on with our lives until the day we all get vaporised in the name of politics or something. To cheer yourselves up, why not visit our merch store and buy an expensive mug or a t-shirt? Or you can support the channel via Buy Me a Coffee. You won't be needing any money soon anyway. You may as well give it to me. Or consider joining the cult on Patreon. You get access to our Discord, the amazing reading clubs, the podcast, and it's a death cult, so that's cool. Links to all of that in the description of this video. Unless we're all dead, in which case, just ignore me. Thank you so much. Of all the fictional depictions of the end of the world, the one that has had the greatest impact and the furthest reach is the mad hypothesis. Mutually assured destruction, the exchange of nuclear weapons. This is a very real military strategy, ironically designed to ensure global peace. The theory is that nobody will start World War III because very quickly that would be the end of World War III for everybody. There are plenty of stories about that specific doomsday scenario, what leads to the pushing of the big red button. But I think the most fertile ground for great speculative fiction lies beyond the mushroom cloud. For obvious reasons, post-atomic war fiction didn't surface until after 1945. I could recommend the 1933 H.G. Wells novel The Shape of Things to Come, which has themes of rebuilding civilization after a terrible war and the use of weapons of mass destruction. But it does lack the horror of the big bomb. Put simply, after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, science fiction writers had a new toy to play with. And play they did, from every conceivable angle. The perfect doomsday transition novel is On the Beach by Nevil Shute, 1957. It has a fairly unique depiction of the end of the world. Instead of a very small window of disaster where the bombs fall all over the world on the same day, in On the Beach, most of the southern hemisphere is initially unaffected. In a projected vision of 1963, World War III kicks off in Europe, but then very quickly spreads to North America, the Soviet Union and China, rendering the vast majority of human, animal and plant life on the planet dead. The remaining pockets of humanity in South Africa, New Zealand and Australia experience oblivion in slow motion as air currents gradually but inevitably bring radiation poisoning to every corner of the globe. So even though this is a book about the actual physical fallout of these horrible weapons, the focus is on the characters. What would the emotional response look like in a situation like this? And that's the essence of this subgenre. The apocalypse is just the mechanism to set up the human story. What is Civilization 2.0? Who picks up the pieces? What information and lessons of the past do we carry with us into the future? To name but a few examples, The Long Tomorrow, The Wild Shore, Swan Song and Alas Babylon punch through the war and have enough people left on the other side to talk about a warped government, a system in place for the survivors that we at least recognise. We also have the extension of the prepper mentality story. Again, this is a very real thing. There are plenty of, mainly Americans, stockpiling water, food, fuel, and of course guns. But in the books, it's often a billionaire or some dodgy organisation with some knowledge of the upcoming catastrophe, building a facility to shelter, planning to resurface when the coast is clear. The best example I've come across is Hugh Howey's Silo trilogy. Thousands of people living in a big underground bunker, and we pick up the story generations after the apocalypse. So there's this really interesting cultural distance, a disconnection with the version of humanity that blew up the world and built the silo. This unique situation opens the door to manipulation and control. And this is where the post-apocalyptic genre moves into dystopian territory. Many dystopian novels have that same backstory of World War III. It turns out that even after we scorch the earth, there'll still be plenty of people looking for power, treading on others and enforcing their ideals. Quick side note, observation, Around the late 90s, this trend, spearheaded by the Hunger Games, was adopted by the young adult corner of the bookshop. The template is to have a would-be hero that rises from the underclass of a dystopian society that only happens to exist because there was once a nuclear war. I like that idea. It's extremely popular because it works, and dare I say, feels plausible. Then we have books that technically fall into the post-apocalyptic nook, but take place so long after the event that the relevance is eroded. Or we've advanced to the multi-planet stage, and blowing up the Earth is a damn shame, but we've got plenty of other places that we can live, and eventually blow up too. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Philip K. Dick. Trust him to cover this oversaturated subject from an obliquely unique angle. Born in 1928, he would have been a teenager at the end of World War II and matured into a young man in the shadow of the bomb, right at the heart of the atomic age. Pretty much all of his work is about identity, the fabric of reality, weird drugs, and the manifestation of mental states. But it's also extremely autobiographical and heavily influenced by the real world around him, including his hatred for conflict. He does directly write about the post-apocalypse in Dr. Blood Money, or How We Got Along After the Bomb. But even when he's not addressing it head on, the setting is quite often post-World War III, or even World War IV. Vulcan's Hammer, The Man Who Japed, Time Out of Joint, The Penultimate Truth, The Game Players of Titan, The Simulacra, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? All technically post-apocalyptic, but certainly not the first thing you consider when you think about the story. Like those dystopian stories, Dick uses the convenience and the horror of Armageddon to build a new framework to tell his tale. It's pessimistic. His Civilization 2.0 is almost always grey and oppressive. We survive the bomb, but the price we pay is totalitarian control. If there is a conclusion to be drawn, an overarching theme to the purpose of post-apocalyptic fiction, surely it's one of introspection. Literature about conflict can be full of benefits of the doubt, sacrifice, redemption, even hope and bravery. We live to fight another day. But taking the exchange of weapons to the limit only feels like failure. Civilization 1.0 has had a million wars and will continue to have many more. But mutually assured destruction is indeed mad. A Canticle for Leibowitz, Walter M. Miller, 1959, understands this sickness of technological progress and collapse. In the book, humanity has an apocalypse. We emerge from the rubble, we rebuild, we address what went wrong. Eventually, we build the same weapons. We have another apocalypse. Rinse and repeat. It's about a lot more than a continuous loop of oblivion. I think more than any other book in this field, it gives humanity another chance. It really tries to examine why we build the big red button in the first place. The future is not set. There is no fate but what we make for ourselves. I bloody love the end of the world. Thank you for watching. May I suggest watching our companion essay about dystopian fiction, which, despite having filmed it in Swindon, is one of my personal favourite videos.